I am Jason Floyd. Of course, we are presented by Super Draft. Pete, man, we had a great week last week for the UFC Fight Night card. You had the optimal lineup, so congratulations on that, brother.
Hey, thank you, thank you. I hope that you guys were out there killing it like we were. I feel like we did pretty damn good on the picks and breaking down the fights. It was a banger of a card, and that's usually how it is. The card looks pretty terrible on paper, and then it turns out to be quite exciting. Tons of finishes and some high scoring. You're talking about lineups in the 700. So we got a nice card here, but last week was awesome.
Yeah, it certainly helps when you get Christian Aguilera to come in. Of course, that was a fight we talked about last week because, that opening fight that you need to have the winning side of that one. And that if Christian came in, he was going to be not the one lineup. And if you did have Merab Dashvili in your lineup, unfortunately, you were not going to cash because, man, just 173 points. And then Cynthia Calvillo getting the job done in the main event. And, of course, we're going to break this one down for you this week and help you out, whether it's on Super Draft, DraftKings, FanDuel. Any questions that you do have about the fights, hit them up right now in YouTube. Of course, if this is your first time watching the show, the way it works, we start off with the main event. We work our way down the fight card, and we do answer your questions on the fights as we go down. If we get to the end of the show, we haven't answered your question, we'll get to your question right there at the end of the show. But, Pete, let's start right off with the main event. Heavyweights, Curtis Blaydes versus Alexander Volkov. Curtis Blaydes, the biggest betting favorite on this card. Of course, on the DK side of things, he's 9,400, so you got to pay up for him. But, in terms of breaking this one down, Pete, I think it's pretty simple. Is if you want to take the underdog here and you want to take a punt play in Alexander Volkov, to me, it's you have to believe that he is going to be able to stop Curtis Blaydes from taking this fight to the ground.
Yeah, man, what a tough task at hand for Volkov here going up against Curtis Blaydes. The 9,400 price tag might scare a lot of people off, but I think it's justified since it's 5 rounds. You have a dominant wrestler who is extremely active on top, throws tons of ground and pound, doesn't really look for submissions at all, but gets his work done with vicious ground and pound. Look at the Alistair Overeem knockout. I mean, those elbows were nasty. And it's a very tough fight for Volkov, and I think Blaydes is going to have to make some adjustments because Volkov's a very tall, rangy guy at 6'7", but they do have similar reach at 80 inches. But if the smaller cage, will force the action, which I think can help Curtis Blaydes out in this instant, where he can get his hands on Volkov, put him to the mat, and I don't really see Volkov being able to stop enough takedowns to win the fight. But you never know.
When you think of Curtis Blaydes, the top control, I want to say he's like 2 or 3 minutes away from actually having the most top control in UFC heavyweight division history. Randy Couture is number one. I mean, the question I think ultimately is I do believe that Curtis is going to be able to get this fight to the ground. It's just a matter of, can Volkov work his way up to the feet? I mean, you mentioned about there is, I believe it's only 3 submission wins for Volkov in his pro career. But can he use those long legs potentially try to get up in a triangle type position? To me, when I think of the majority of lineups I'm going to have, Curtis Blaydes is going to be in those lineups.
Yeah, I can't fault you there. I like Curtis Blaydes. He's going to be a staple in most of my lineups because he's a solid striker, a very good striker. His grappling, he's relentless. He trains at elevation. Team Elevation has been on a roll. We've been talking about it every week. He has got cardio for days. Volkov needs to stop the takedowns, but really get, being able to move around in that smaller cage and still have the good volume. Because Volkov, he has great volume, and that's usually how he wins his fights, by points. But I think the bigger shots will be for Curtis Blaydes. The worry is somehow if he gasses out, and Volkov's just so tough, or Volkov throws up a Hail Mary submission off of his back, an armbar, a triangle, something that a fighter with long legs would look to use. Outside of that, I really think Blaydes should get this done in convincing fashion. I just think he's the younger guy, has more momentum on his side, is really going to look like a title contender. I know that he has 2 losses to Francis Ngannou, but how many people would be beating Francis Ngannou in that division? So outside of Francis, I think Curtis is a nightmare for everybody in the division. The fight starts on the feet, Jason. So obviously Volkov's going to be at the advantage to begin with. But if Blaydes gets inside of that reach, wraps him up, puts him against the cage, I really think it's going to be a tough night for Volkov.
Yeah, the crazy thing, I saw the stat earlier. Aaron Bronster of TSN tweeted out. So 11 fights for Curtis Blaydes in UFC. Of course, we know his 2 losses against Francis Ngannou. He has been the betting favorite in all 11 fights. He's a massive favorite in this one. Currently minus 430. Volkov plus 345. I know sometimes people like to ask us about the prop bets. I mean, look, if you're trying to lower that number on Curtis Blaydes, just take the Blaydes by TKO KO minus 190. I don't think you're going to see him go out there and get submission. But from a DFS perspective, to me, it's like taking the takedown city. What we saw Marab last week. Take him down, get some top control, do some advances on the ground, let it back up, and then just rinse and repeat. From a DFS perspective, that's what we want.
Absolutely. I mean, look at Dalashvili last week. I didn't really think that his opponent's going to be able to get back up to his feet and be as tough as he was. And turns out he was tough. And it actually helped Dalashvili, racking up a career 13 takedowns, which is insane. So in this instant, Curtis Blaydes, with his vicious ground and pound, he's a safe play. Obviously, you want to be contrarian. You could take Volkov at 6,800, and you're going to have so much salary to spend elsewhere. You could be looking good. So I'll have one lineup with Volkov for the simple fact it's a 5-round fight. It's a heavyweight fight. But Volkov doesn't really have that heavyweight crack where he can just change the fight from one strike. Obviously, a knee up the middle or an uppercut can change everything against a wrestler. But Blaydes is a smart play here. Volkov was struggling to defend takedowns against Fabricio Verdum, and Verdum's an amazing, accomplished grappler, but doesn't have the best takedowns. He has the best ground control and the best submissions and the best guard in the heavyweight division. But his takedowns are somewhat lethargic, and he was taking Volkov down like easy. So I think it's going to be a nightmare matchup for Volkov against Curtis Blaydes.
Appreciate the support in the YouTube chat from Mike and Jay. Mike, we'll get to your question here right now. Who do you believe will have a finish in the prelims and in the main card?
So I would say Blaydes, I think, is going to get a finish. I would be shocked if Volkov can survive 5 rounds of Curtis Blaydes. It can happen. And then a fight that we'll get to that I actually see it, somebody's getting knocked out is the Camacho against James fight. I really feel like that's going to be a fight that's going to end pretty early.
I spoke to one of my peeps in the MMA industry today about Justin James, so got a little info on that one. Yeah, I agree about Curtis Blaydes. I mean, to me, that's the one I feel safest about. In terms of the prelims, first fight of the night, I think is a fight you got to look at.
Yep.
Max, a tremendous grappler. I think the only question is, can Austin Hubbard maybe stifle that submission game a little bit, that grappling game, and maybe get this fight second, third round, maybe wear it down Max. I think those are the fights I would pay attention to. But Mike, really do appreciate there in the super chat on YouTube. Jay, appreciate. Yeah, let's get it this weekend. Of course, we had a great weekend last week and look to keep it going on here. Co-main event is going to be a matchup that is probably the fight that interests me the most out of any fight on this card, and that is Shane Burgos and Josh Emmett. Shane Burgos is the betting favorite in this one. 8,700 on DK, 7,500 on for Emmett, $17 on FanDuel for Burgos, 15 for Emmett. Looking over at Super Draft, 1.2 times for Burgos and 1.3 times for Josh Emmett. This one of those fights I keep going back and forth on whether or not you have to roster this fight. And you look at the volume of Shane Burgos. You love the volume, the amount of strikes, significant strikes that he does throw. Josh Emmett, he's got that one-hitter quitter that he can knock him out. To me, I would definitely have more shares of Shane Burgos than I will Josh Emmett.
Yeah, man, I think this is a popular fight, and I think this is one of the pivotal matchups on the card that you need to have the correct side. So have lineups with both of these guys. Emmett's going to be the chalk of the 7,000 range of people looking for somebody with an upside play in the 7K range that can get a KO. 7,500, he's done it in the past, and he has explosive power and good wrestling to rely on. For me, though, I really like Shane Burgos, and I think that he could be going overlooked here at 8,700. His price tag isn't sexy, but his volume is, man. Like, he throws 7.09 strikes per minute. That is incredibly high. I know he fights at the 145-pound weight class, but he does absorb 5 strikes a minute, which is a big problem. And in the past, he has shown some susceptibility to getting cracked and wobbled on the feet. But as you have noticed, over the past few fights, he has taken less and actually looked better. It's almost like he's matured. I mean, when you first get into the UFC, it's all about making statements and leaving big impressions and on Dana and the matchmakers and everything. And then once you really, I go back to the Calvin Kattar fight, it's a perfect example. And then once you start to settle into the division and the UFC and everything surrounding it, I think you're really starting to see Shane Burgos' potential. Now, the volume is there for Shane Burgos. His susceptibility to taking a big shot, though, is pretty scary. So, buyer beware here at 8,700. But I think it's going to be an action-packed fight from bell to bell. I think you need to have one side or another. This is one of the fights that I put a big exclamation mark next to. I said, I need this fight. I'm taking Burgos more than I'm taking Emmett. I will not ignore Emmett based on that one shot, but I think Burgos is safe, man. And I think that he trains with somebody that can emulate Josh Emmett pretty well, and that's Jimmy Rivera. Jimmy Rivera throws great bombs and has a lot of power for his division. It's basically the same stature as Josh Emmett. So for me, I think the reach is going to be a little bit of a problem for Emmett to overcome the 5 inches and the 5-inch height disadvantage as well. I just see Burgos going out there and putting on a nice, beautiful performance.
Yeah, I mean, on the super draft side of things, let's look at the underdogs in the main event, co-main event, Volkov and Emmett, both at 1.35 times. If you told me I had to take one or the other on super draft, I would much rather have Josh Emmett than Alexander Volkov.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that's close. I can, if you tell me Emmett wins Sunday morning, I'm not surprised. I think that Emmett, it's a close fight. And I think the odds suggest it's pretty close. It's somewhat of a pick 'em, not really. Slight edge to Burgos. But, I also look at the struggles from the camp. And I think about the quarantine as well. You have Emmett in California with Team Alpha Male, who has been struggling as of late. You have Burgos in New York, quarantined New York, New Jersey area, but with the Showman brothers. I just like Burgos a little bit more in this situation. I can't fault you if you like Emmett, though.
Here's what concerns me about Josh Emmett. It's the Michael Johnson fight, 3-round fight.
Exactly.
He ends up getting the win in the 3rd round, but he only landed 22 significant strikes. That concerns me.
You're not always going to find that knockout shot, Jason. And it's almost like it bails you out. It's like your get out of jail free card. And that's not always going to happen. You're not going to get lucky like that. A lot of luck happens in MMA. You're wearing small gloves and you're throwing very, very hard. So I think in this situation, I just think Burgos is the better fighter.
Question coming in from Hunter. He says Burgos is slower and is going to trade with a man with more power. He can be out wrestled. Why my guys like him?
I don't think he's slower. I don't think he's slower at all. I think that he feints better. He has better footwork. I think Emmett's pretty easy to emulate in the gym, where you need a guy throwing bombs, big wide shots. I think Burgos is crafty, and you can see him really getting into a rhythm. Like I said, I will have a few lineups with Emmett, but for me personally, I like Burgos a little bit more, and perhaps I'm being slightly biased by what I personally like, but Burgos for me.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's one of those fights I think you have to look at of potentially a fight that you might have to roster just because, I think when you look at the volume of Shane Burgos, that is something that you want to mention. But, of course, this is a UFC Fight Night, Volkov versus Blaydes DFS strategy show. Of course, we are presented by Super Draft. The future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience Super Draft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. Super Draft offers contests for PGA, NASCAR, and MMA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for Super Draft today using the promo code Awesemo 12. That's AEWSEMO 12, and it's $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more, and $20 total free on your first deposit of $100 or more. New users can also get a free $12 ticket. That's right, a free $12 ticket. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. Superdraft, no limits, more winning. Of course, do want to let you know, make sure you follow Awesemo on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, as we'll be providing free Awesemo Plus player projections for PGA, NASCAR, and MMA and more on our Instagram feed at Awesemo_com and our Facebook page daily. So be sure to give us a follow there. Also, you got to check out that Awesemo Plus MMA weekly pass. Get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for tonight's MMA slate, and with a MMA weekly pass for $8.95. This includes full access to Awesemo's leading fighter projections, ownership projections, and the top fighter tool. There's never been a better time for MMA DFS. So get in the game today. Of course, over at Awesemo.com, you got to check out Pete's spreadsheet, where you can see right here on the YouTube chat. Of course, we will be sitting there and breaking down all these fights for you. Next up, we got a female matchup. We got Rocky Pennington taking on Marion Renault. I already see how your face reaction on this one. You know, we always kind of talk about, there's fights that maybe we're not, in terms of DFS, the most interested in. Pennington, 8,800 on DK, 7,400 for Renault. Over on the FanDuel side of things, $17 for Pennington, $13 for Renault. And then over on Superdraft, 1.2 times for Pennington and 1.3 times for Renault. This is in terms of DFS. If you're going to put this fight in your lineup, to me, it's a cash games. I don't see this as a GPP fight.
Dude, I don't even want to talk about this fight, but we have to. Respect to Pennington and Renault, of course, but Pennington at 8,800, that's insane. I'm not paying that. And if you want to look at a fight that's basically going to be forgotten on the card, this is the fight to gain a lot of leverage on the opposing field. So if you're always looking for a fight to target that people are kind of skipping past, I think this is one of the fights you can look at. Pennington at 8,800 for somebody who averages 57 DraftKings points is a little nuts to me. She doesn't have a high output, 3.32 strikes a minute. Renault on the other side at 7,400 only averages 54 DraftKings points. I think this fight is pretty close. So the 8,800 versus 7,400 price tags don't really make sense to me. I do see Pennington winning the fight. I see it being a fight against the cage of a lot of, fighting for underhooks, pressure against the cage, clinch work. But man, I'll tell you, I probably won't have many lines with Pennington at 8,800, and she could go out there and shock me. But I think more cases than not, it's a safe play to avoid her at 8,800. For Renault at 7,400, I think you're hoping a Hail Mary submission happens or a stoppage somehow. But I think if you look at Pennington, she's never been submitted. So I just see this as a pass for me. The fight's going to the distance.
Yeah, and if you look at your sheet there, the average fight time, 14 minutes and 23 seconds for Pennington, 12 minutes and 51 seconds for Renault. And as I pull up the betting odds here, I'm going to guess that over 2.5 round prop is pretty damn high on this one. As I pull it up, over 2.5 rounds, Pete, minus 320.
Dude, that's insane. I'm looking at the salaries, and I don't really see a spot that you can take advantage of. The price on DraftKings for Pennington's wild. Price on FanDuel is wild. Super Draft, it's close, and I think that's interesting. Maybe this is a fight that appeals more on Super Draft. But breaking it down, Pennington's. She likes to strike a little bit. She just doesn't throw enough. I mean, it's so hard to think of a positive Pennington performance where she hasn't been on the wrong end of the beating in quite some time. But I know that her and Tisha Torres are fighting on the same card. They both look like they're training really hard with Rose Namajunas. So I feel like they're going to come a little bit more motivated, a little bit reinvigorated. I don't know if it translates into finishes. I think the odds on a finish in this fight must be outlandish.
Yeah, I think this fight definitely has 15 minutes. But if you told me one fighter gets a stoppage, I would definitely say it would be Rocky Pennington.
It's so hard for me to say. I really feel like this is a close fight, coin flip fight. I just see them kind of nullifying each other's styles a little bit. Like I said, I think Pennington's going to win, but it's a fight I'll generally move past.
Then we got Bilal Muhammad taking on Lyman Good. Lyman Good, who I think will probably be DraftKings chalk this week with his
Yeah.
price point of 7,300. Bilal Muhammad at 8,900 over on FanDuel. $18 for Muhammad, $14 for Good, and over on SuperDraft, 1.2 times for Bilal Muhammad and 1.4 times for Lyman Good. Lyman Good, of course, this is his first fight since obviously everyone knows about COVID-19 with him. Bilal Muhammad, I think that the thing that would concern me in taking him, especially in GPP, I like him more in cash than I do GPP. Is just the fact of he does tend to, his fights tend to go, late in the third round. And you look at his average fight time, 13 minutes and 15 seconds. That kind of leads to that. But as I said, I think on the DFS side of this thing and GPP side, I think Lyman Good's going to be a very popular play because of his price.
Yeah, I think the two most popular 7K options will be Josh Emmett and then followed by Lyman Good. And I can't really fault you there because you're always looking at 7K options that can get a finish. And we spoke about it last week. Let's target the 7K guys that could get a finish. And those two would be in consideration because Josh Emmett, if he wins, most likely it's by knockout. And I would say the same for Lyman Good. Bilal Muhammad's really tough. The last time we saw Bilal Muhammad really get hurt or rocked or finished was against Vicente Luque. And Vicente Luque is a stud in the division, possibly my favorite fighter in the division. Lyman Good, I think, could be going overlooked by a lot of people thinking that Muhammad has this in the bag. And Muhammad usually, has decent striking, but out grapples people with some constant pressure and some good takedowns. Now, Lyman Good's a big, big guy, but he is coming off of having coronavirus, and that is the truth. How has that genuinely affected him? Has he had a good training camp? Has he been able to train completely? And I know that he popped about 2 months ago when he was originally supposed to fight, but I feel like you could be getting a discount on Lyman Good if people hear that he had coronavirus. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe like that's a worry. And they're like, I'll just pick somebody else in the 7K range. Do I think that, Lyman Good goes out there and finishes Bilal Muhammad? I'm probably a little bit underweight on that idea. I will have him, but I think that Muhammad's tough enough to survive. He's been through a lot of wars. He's seen a lot of good, talented fighters, and Lyman Good, outside of his Bellator career, has been slightly up and down. But I think he's starting to hit his stride, and this is where I think Lyman Good could pull off the upset. It's a close fight, but I think Lyman Good could get it done, and I actually think it's going to happen, via decision. As crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, well, I do agree with you about the decision aspect of it. I mean, I think that's, when you're looking at those 7,000 options, that's something you got to consider of how much value do you put on can they win by finish or will they win by stoppage? Then we got a lightweight matchup, Jim Miller taking on Roosevelt Roberts. Of course, Jim Miller, the UFC vet, Roosevelt Roberts, the young gun. Roosevelt Roberts coming off that recent win against Brock Weaver, submission win there in the second round a couple weeks ago. He's 9,200 on DK. Jim Miller, 7,000. $20 for Roosevelt Roberts on FanDuel, $12 for Jim Miller. And then over on the Super Draft side of things, 1.1 times for Roosevelt, 1.5 times for Jim Miller. I do feel that if Jim Miller can pull this off, Pete, I think it happens in the first round. Not saying that's my pick at all. I like Roosevelt Roberts in this spot, but I think if Jim Miller is going to pull off the upset, it happens early.
I can see that. I mean, we have seen Jim Miller do that. If you think back of his performance against Clay Guida, Clay Guida hit him with a right hand and staggered Jim Miller, and then Jim Miller actually staggered him with a shot. So then Clay Guida shot him for a takedown, and then Miller wrapped up a really, really tight guillotine and finished Clay Guida. Jim Miller's ground game is legit. But outside of his ground game, can he get you to the mat? He does have good pressure against the cage, but he's a little small in comparison to Roosevelt Roberts. The question marks around Roosevelt Roberts are legitimate, though. How much is hype? How much is actual talent? I believe the talent is there. Could the hype be somewhat overblown and kind of like, I don't know, giving a false perception of what he really is. I think that the Vince Pichel fight's a very important fight to look towards, where he basically got out strengthened and out muscled, and he just was, grinded against the cage, taken down relentlessly. Can Miller do that? I'm not sure. I think Roberts at 9,200. He's not one of my favorite 9,000 options based on Miller's, toughness in the division. How many people haven't been able to put him away? We saw Roberts struggle a little bit in his previous fight against Brock Weaver in the first round. It was closer than how it should have been. We got all this hype, and Roberts is going out there guillotining everybody and finishing them, and he does have some good striking. But against Miller, a veteran, you might think Roberts takes a more patient approach. And the reason is if you look at his fights, he tends to fade as the fight goes on. So maybe his gas tank and his cardio is in question. So maybe he realizes, like, look, I need to go in there and I need to get some experience, get the full rounds, because I don't want to be in there shot after round one, having to deal with the veteran Jim Miller for rounds 2 and 3. Like I said, 9,200 is not a bad price tag for Roberts. I can definitely see it happening. I'll have plenty shares of him. Miller, I back Miller in other spots when he's a super underdog, but I really don't think he gets it done. I think he's just not skilled enough against Roberts at this point in time. Obviously, if he takes Roberts back, that's a whole different story. But for me, I think it's safe to pick Roberts.
Here's a concern with Roosevelt Roberts. Who's his best UFC win?
It's a good
Darrell
point.
Orchard, Thomas Gifford, Alexander Yakovlev, Brock Weaver. To me, it'd be Yakovlev. But you look at his first 2 wins, both those guys are not in the UFC anymore.
Yeah, and look at the Yakovlev fight. Outside of a late scramble in their fight, he could have been looking at a bad decision. You know what I'm saying? Like, that fight was close. And the fact that he lost to Vince Pichel, and Vince Pichel's good and he's tough. But I think Vince Pichel does have better takedown offense than Jim Miller does. I feel like Jim Miller has great jiu-jitsu, but offensive takedowns are a problem for Roberts if you can put him against the cage. Roberts seems like he's comfortable kind of rope-a-doping against the cage and throwing strikes and countering, almost similar to Bobby Green in a way of how they like to bring the fight out of their opponent to get going in the fight. And sometimes it leads to closer fights than they should be. Like for me, it's Roberts or move on. Miller will be popular at 7K, but if he does go out there and get a finish, I'm okay with it.
Just to let everyone know, coming up here at the end of the show, I will be announcing the winner of the free Awesemo Plus MMA Weekly Pass. If you follow Awesemo on Twitter, you saw that earlier today. Of course, if you're not following Awesemo, you got to do that. There's an Awesemo MMA account, Awesemo MMA, so be sure to give that account a follow. Of course, as I mentioned about, you can check out Pete's spreadsheet that you see up on the screen. Great job that Pete does there. Of course, also if you're a premium member, check out all of Alex's fire projections, and it's a tool that I use to check out some of the projections, especially on ownership, because that's what you're definitely looking for. Speaking of those 9,000 options, we got the one Bobby Green at 9,100 taking on Clay Guida at 7,100 over on FanDuel. $19 for Bobby Green, $12 for Clay Guida, and then over on SuperDraft, 1.1 times for Bobby Green and 1.5 times for Clay Guida. When the lines came out on this, Pete, I looked at Clay Guida. I said, "Oh man, yeah, if Clay uses wrestling." But then you really start looking deep dive into Clay Guida. When has he used his wrestling last? Eric Koch a couple of years ago. I don't. And I think this is where I'll offer caution on Bobby Green. Bobby Green tends to find himself in a lot of close fights that end up going the distance.
It's a great point, and yes, he does. Bobby Green has so much talent, man. I really feel like he does, and he's given a lot of tough and elite fighters a very hard time because the guy has great striking, good takedown defense, good scrambling ability. He's just an overall great fighter in the 155-pound division. So I hope that he goes out there and gets the win, because I still want to see him in the UFC. I feel like we haven't seen the best out of him yet. In this situation, I think that Guida is going to be another 7K option that a lot of people are going to turn to. And I can't blame you, because, you get desperate trying to find a 7K option. Unlike straight betting, when it comes to DraftKings or FanDuel, you have to take people that are, less expensive and take some chances. So you have to back somebody who's an underdog, essentially. I can't fault you if you're taking Guida, but I think Guida's going to struggle to get the takedowns. I really do. I saw enough on film of Bobby Green, and I think he could defend takedowns, spin around, get in front headlocks, actually go for his own takedowns as well. And I think he has some great ground and pound. I think that we could be getting Bobby Green at low ownership at 9,100. And let me tell you, I think a lot of people see Bobby Green and say there's no way he could be a 9,000 option. You got Roosevelt Roberts there, who's a notorious finisher. Okay. You have Curtis Blaydes there at 9,400. When's the last time Bobby Green has really gone out there and, got a finish? And it's been quite some time. Or when is the last time that he's gone out there and dominated a fight? It always seems like he wins a round, loses a round, and then, the third round's up for debate. So it's close fights every time. But in this situation, I think Bobby Green can outstrike Clay Guida. And Clay Guida has shown, some chinniness to him of him getting cracked and hurt and getting desperate for some takedowns. And I think against the bigger Bobby Green, 3-inch, height advantage, only a 1-inch reach advantage. But I think the power and size of Bobby Green could be big here. Obviously, I want to see how weigh-ins are for all these fighters. I like to make big statements or big decisions after weigh-ins, basically seeing how everybody is on the scale or after. But I think Green at 9,100, he's going to be one of my 9K options. I like a little bit more than the field, and I'm okay with that.
And look, the other thing you got to be looking out for is these COVID-19 tests. We saw it happen today where, now Nevada is saying if one of your cornermen tests positive, you're out of your own fight. The boxing card on ESPN tonight lost their main event because one of the fighters' managers tested positive.
It makes
and
sense.
So it's something you have to pay attention to because, and maybe you liked Frank Camacho going into this and you like his price point of 8,000. Now maybe he's going to be a staple in your lineup. So that is something to pay attention to. I do want to go over to the chat and a question about the last fight from Hunter. He said, so Pete against the cage is a good place to be versus Jim Miller?
Well, no. When Roberts puts himself against the cage, it's not good for anybody, but Miller tends to do the same thing as well. Miller tends to put himself against the cage. I think that if Roberts gets tired, you could see Jim Miller start to get back into the fight a little bit more. I still think Roberts should get a decisive win here, but I think that Miller should have his moments as any veteran should.
Yeah. Then we got a female matchup. Tisha Torres taking on Brianna Van Buuren. Tisha Torres, 7,200, 9,000 for Van Buuren, $18 for Van Buuren on FanDuel, $11 for Torres. And then over on Super Draft, 1.1 times for Van Buuren and 1.4 times for Tisha Torres. Tisha Torres is going to be, she's probably, I would almost call her my punt play of the week just because, yes, she's lost 4 in a row, Pete. But go look who she's lost to. It's at the top of the division.
Yeah. I was interested to see your take on this fight. Her last 4 fights: Marina Rodriguez, Weili Zhang, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Jessica Andrade. Like, you can't literally tell me those aren't the 4 best fighters in that division. And then okay, well, here's a newcomer. She's going to lose a 5th fight in a row. I don't think that's how that works. And I really feel like Tisha Torres could be going, overlooked here. She doesn't have the best DFS output. Let's just throw it out there. But she has a very enticing price at 7,200. I'm not buying the hype of Van Buuren. I'm just not. I think that she has good takedowns. Seems to have okay striking. Seems to be pretty fast, but who isn't at that weight class? She hasn't faced any adversity yet. And you're facing Tisha Torres, who's been on The Ultimate Fighter and has fought the elite in the division and seems a little pissed off and motivated to go out there and get a victory and doesn't want to go with a 5th loss in a row to a newcomer. So, those all play a factor here. And I think Van Buuren could be, she's saying she's going to finish her with a punch or a knee. That ain't happening. Torres is not going to go out there and if that happens, bro, then Van Buuren's legit. But Torres at 7,200, I'm going to have plenty of shares. This fight goes the distance, most likely. Torres only averages 55.7 points per fight. But I feel like the strikes she throws could be what is a little deceiving in this matchup. She throws a lot of side kicks. So it's not like she's going to go out there and just box Van Buuren or stand in front of her, because Torres has shown some takedown defensive problems of getting put on her back and held down. And Van Buren has great takedowns, nothing against the girl at all. I just think the movement of Torres, the scrappiness, even the size, slight size advantage, 5 feet, 5'1". That's not really much, but I would say the muscle of Tecia Torres. I feel like she's a strong girl, especially tight in the clinch. I think she's going to go out there and get a W. I think it's a pretty easy fight to say it's going the distance. I think that's a safe prop bet.
Tecia Torres decision, really?
Yeah, right. I think this fight literally has decision written all over it. Van Buren should have moments because the girl's legit. She comes from a good camp, but I'm not buying the hype that she's going to go in there and take out Tecia Torres, because if Tecia Torres loses this fight, Jason, where is she to next? Who's she fighting next? I have no idea.
Invicta.
Yeah, I mean, she honestly might be, and I don't think that's fair because she has taken so many tough fights. So many tough fights. I mean, look, let me scroll down her record right here. Rose Namajunas, Paige Van Zandt, Felice Herrig, Reyna Marcos, Beck Rawlings, Carla Esparza, Angela Hill, Namajunas, Rawlings, like Waterson, and then the top 4 of the division. That's some like murderer's row right there. And I think that all those fights, the experience has helped her. And I think that she can maybe edge out Van Buren in this fight. And at 7,200, if she gets me 80 points, I'm happy, dude. Like, I'm not going to have her all over the place, but I'll definitely have shares.
This is the thing about Van Buren is they are throwing her to, how good are you? Is about the best way I would put it. Tecia Torres, there is something common in her last 3 fights. She hasn't been able to get the fight to the ground. She did get 2 takedowns against Jessica Andrade, which she ultimately lost. That to me is going to be the key is can she get this fight to the ground? It's a step up in competition for Van Buren. Can she show that she has stepped up there? Travis in the chat says this might be another Aguilera versus Ivy type fight. I wouldn't go about it saying too much hype. I think, last week we talked about that was a fight that you had to roster. You were going to have the winner in that lineup. And I had 50% shares on Christian Aguilera. I had 50% shares on Ivy. I had that fight rostered every single one of my lineups. I don't see myself, I bet I'll have one lineup with Van Buren in it, but I'm looking more at Torres just because of the value, because even this thing goes 15 minutes. She gets me 50 points. I'd be pretty happy.
I think it's it's going to be an underwhelming performance for both of them. I don't see the optimal lineup really having either one of these. If anybody, I think it's Torres because of the value and being able to crunch in the top, fighters in there. So, it's a bold call. I know it is, but, I like Torres's experience to edge out Van Buren.
Then we've got Marc-Andre Barriault taking on Oscar Pehota over on Super Draft side of things. Pehota 1.25 times, Barriault 1.35 times, 8,600 for Pehota on DK, Barriault 7,600, and then 17 for Pehota on FanDuel, $15 for Marc-Andre. This is a fight that I don't know how many people have a lot of faith in rostering either one of these guys. But Marc-Andre, I think, is a guy that just because of his salary is someone that I'm looking at.
Yeah. Okay. So this might surprise a lot of people, but I think this is one of the fights that you might need to have, based on the problems that each fighter has in their game. So Oscar Pehota, he's pretty chinny and gets cracked pretty easily and doesn't seem like he can take too much of a shot. And Barriault seems like he can get outgrinded on the mat and potentially submitted, even though it hasn't happened yet. And he has lost 3 straight decisions. This fight for me is another one that I think I'm circling, and I'm not sure how many people out there are. I don't think Pehota's that good. I really don't think that Oscar Pehota is that good. And I think that he'll get desperate with his takedown attempts. We have seen Barriault get taken down by his previous opponent who shouldn't be taking him down. But Barriault also trains with, Leduc and has some awesome striking if he goes out there and throws it. And before the UFC, he was racking up TKO wins like crazy. So I think this is a nice spot for Barriault at 7,600. look at his box score. It's pretty ugly. He averages 15 minutes of fight time. His average DK score is 28.2. But I really feel like the striking deficiencies of Oscar Pehota could lead to a big shot landing and him hurting Pehota and getting a finish. So at 7,600 on all platforms, so $15 on FanDuel and 1.35 even on SuperDraft, I like it. And I like it because it's a close fight. It's a pick 'em essentially, 120 and minus 120 and plus 100. I feel like this fight's going to be ended early within the first 2 rounds. And, I'll take the discount of Barrios at 7,600.
Yeah, looking over at our ownership projections over on the FanDuel side of things, 27% for Pehota, 26% for Barrios, and over on the DraftKings side, 21% for Pehota, 17% for Mark Andre. So something to pay attention to in terms of that fight is, you look at that price point, is somebody you definitely have to look at there. Next up, we have got Courtney Casey taking on Jillian Robertson. Courtney Casey, of course, coming off that submission win. She is priced at $7,900, $8,300 for Jillian Robertson, $16 for Robertson on FanDuel, $15 for Courtney Casey. Then over on SuperDraft, 1.25 times for Robertson, 1.35 times for Courtney Casey. This is a fight that I don't know if you have to roster it, but I almost kind of feel that Jillian Robertson could be in the optimal lineup.
Yeah. All right. So let's start it like this, Jason. Okay. Let's talk about the female fights. Pennington Renault, finish or decision?
Decision.
Van Buuren Torres, finish or decision?
Decision.
Robertson Casey, finish or decision?
Finish.
See, I feel like of the female fights, this is one of them that could potentially end in a finish. And then next, obviously, we have Modafferi and Murphy. But I think that this fight could end in a finish. So I wrote down my favorite fights on my little, handy dandy notebook. But this is one of the extra bonus ones that I kind of put a little star that I might have a little exposure to, because in a way it's similar to Pehota against Marc Andre Barrios, where Robertson has great grappling, similar to Pehota, great grappling, good submission ability, good finishing ability. She's like a DraftKings darling over here, averaging 76 points per DraftKings fight. And she goes out there and gets some nice finishes. Courtney Casey likes to stand and bang and throw hands and try to keep it on the feet, but she's lacking takedown defense. Jillian Robertson's literally lacking striking offense. So who's going to expose one another? I'm not too sure. I just remember Courtney Casey, we being big on Courtney Casey in her last bout, and she got taken down pretty quickly. And I was like, oh boy, I don't know if that was a good pick. And then she pulls up some Hail Mary armbar. So maybe she has a sneaky guard, and Robertson has been caught slipping in the past. So I think this is a fight you need to roster. I think I would lean a little bit more towards Robertson. I think she's slightly safer based on what I've seen consistently with finishes. If she stands up with Courtney Casey, she could be getting knocked out or finished. But I like this fight for DFS. I really do.
Yeah, and especially look at the price points. I think it's something that you have to mention. I mentioned over on SuperDraft, 1.25 times for Jillian Robertson and 1.35 times for Courtney Casey. Of course, this show is presented by SuperDraft. The future of daily fantasy sports has arrived. Experience SuperDraft's exclusive game mode multiplier. Say goodbye to salary restrictions and hello to lineup freedom. Use your fantasy sports knowledge to draft any player you want and build your very own dream team. Countless lineup possibilities let you experience daily fantasy sports the way you want. SuperDraft offers contests for PGA, NASCAR, and MMA, so you can enjoy the best of DFS all year round. Sign up for SuperDraft today using the promo code Awesemo12, and it's $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more, and $20 free on your first deposit of $100 or more. New users also get a free $12 ticket. Download in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits, just winning. Of course, do have a podcast giveaway going on right now. Of course, if you can't watch the show live each Thursday, we are available on the Awesemo podcast channel. So check out the pinned tweet at Awesemo_com on Twitter for a chance to win an Awesemo Plus monthly pass. It gives you access to all the premium content, tools, and projections on Awesemo.com for 30 days. All you have to do is like the tweet, subscribe to the Awesemo podcast channel, and leave a 5-star review with your Awesemo username or Twitter handle included. It's that easy. One lucky random winner will be announced this Friday, tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Good luck. Also, do want to mention that mini sports may be on hiatus, but Awesemo Plus isn't. Sign up today for a platinum package, which includes access to all of Awesemo Plus projections, tools, and content for PGA, esports, NASCAR, MMA soccer, and KBO baseball. You can review your membership options by clicking the Awesemo Plus tab in the upper left-hand corner of the Awesemo.com webpage. As mentioned, you got to check out my man Pete's article up there with his spreadsheet, all the facts and figures that he puts together for this fight. Of course, be sure to hit that like button here on YouTube. That does help us out a lot as well. 3 more fights to break down before we get to all of your questions there on the YouTube chat. We got Frank Camacho, who is supposed to take on Matt Pravola. This was going to be 8,200 versus 8,000 on DraftKings. However, that's not the case, as Matt Pravola out of the fight card due to one of his cornermen, a UFC fighter, Billy Quarantillo, testing positive for the coronavirus. So Frank Camacho now takes on Justin James. As of doing this show, no price tag on Justin James. Camacho $8,000 on DraftKings, $16 on DK or on FanDuel, 1.3 times on SuperDraft. So I talked to, I like to make calls around when these fighters tell them a short notice, Pete. And so I asked someone that I trust with knowledge. I said, all right, tell me a little bit about Justin James. And he basically said he's got to take Frank Camacho down.
Yeah. Okay. And, it's interesting because Justin James, I feel like, has been doing this for quite some time. He has nearly 20 fights. He's 15-4, comes in at 5'7", does have a height disadvantage against Camacho for 3 inches and a reach disadvantage of about 6 inches. So, the Camacho and Favola fight was very tough, but I felt it was pivotal for a lot of optimal lineups because, I felt Favola was either going to implement the heavy pressure and grappling and could get a late finish over Camacho, or Camacho's going to go out there like a wild man and put away Favola, who, gets wobbled a lot. Now, Camacho at 155 pounds is a dangerous man. And, used to fight at 170. So you wonder, how much he's really affected by the weight cut, fighting at 155 pounds and going up against a guy in James. I honestly wouldn't recommend him taking down Camacho either, because Camacho, he's good on the ground. He just hasn't been able to show it. His problems in his fights has literally been his gas tank. He's great for 1.5 rounds, and then he's somewhat faded as people are still there in front of him. But the man can brawl. I like Camacho at 8,000. This is a fight I put an exclamation point next to, and I really feel like you need it. At 8,000, the UFC vet who's been through it all, has 22-8 record, some crazy wins over some crazy fighters. You talk about Jeff Neal Magny. Like, he's literally fought everybody, going back to the Ultimate Fighter tryouts and everything. So at 8,000, Camacho is kind of like, I guess, the Tyson Nam of the week. Like, dude, every week we're getting these where somebody's dropping out, getting COVID, I don't know what's going on. They're getting sick or whatever. We're getting these late scratches and late replacements. And, for our benefit, I think Camacho is a safe play. Now, James throws bombs and honestly likes to strike, but I feel like he likes to strike because he's somewhat better than the regional scene. I don't think that he'll like to strike against Frank Camacho when Frank Camacho is literally piecing him up and could potentially finish him.
Yeah, Frank Camacho came to the States, I want to say it was about 3 weeks ago from Guam, trains out there at Team Oyama. He actually got to Vegas last week. Team Oyama's been staying out there the whole time because of other fighters. So when I talked to him, he told me this crazy story where he had to go because we were talking about the COVID test. And I was like, hey, are you looking forward to this or not? And so he tells me about this story about how he had to go to the hospital in 2012 because a moth flew into his ear and he could hear the moth flying in his ear.
Jesus.
And
That
he's
is,
like, literally, the people at the hospital must have thought I was a crazy person.
yeah, right. Yeah, psych wards down the hall. Frank Camacho, I listened to the interview. It was a great interview. Make sure you guys check out Jason. He interviews a lot of the fighters that end up fighting on the UFC card. So it's a very nice little piece to go over there and listen to a little bit more background information on them and, the ins and outs of their fight camp. It's a nice little tool. And I think that you guys should really check out his stuff. For me, it's Frank Camacho in about 80% of my lineups because the 8,000 with his significant strikes. I mean, let's look at the figures here. Okay. Camacho's average fight time is 10 minutes, 34 seconds. He averages 60 fantasy points, but his significant strikes per minute, 6.68. Now, buyer beware, the red flag in this situation is his significant strikes absorbed per minute is 7.14. So, he gives a good shot, but he also takes a lot. And he has really accumulated a lot of damage over time. So it's a fight I think you need. I'm taking more Camacho than James for sure.
Yeah, I'm on the Camacho side of things. I know Hunter asked me about that. Yeah, I'm on the Camacho side of that one. Arturo asked about us going over the picks at the end of the video. Yes, we will definitely go over our picks at the end of the video as we got two more fights left here. We got a female matchup, Roxanne Modafferi taking on Lauren Murphy, 8,500 for Roxanne Modafferi. Murphy, 7,700, $16 on FanDuel for Roxanne, $13 for Lauren. And then over on the Super Draft side of things, 1.25 times for Roxanne, 1.35 times for Lauren Murphy. This is another fight that, man, I think has a decision written all over it, Pete. You look at the average fight time, 13 minutes and 49 seconds for Roxanne Modafferi, 14 minutes and 35 seconds for Lauren Murphy.
Oh, man. I feel like there's going to be a decent amount of lengthy fights. This fight card could go to like 3:00 in the morning.
Don't say that. Don't say that. Don't
One of
say
those
that.
nights, Jason. One of those nights. It'd be the complete opposite of last week. But
if this is a long fight card, I'm blaming you.
Blame the matchmaker. I think it's going to happen. Roxanne Modafferi here at 8,500, I think is going to be a popular pick based on upside. She's coming off that win against Macy Barber. But let's back it up a little bit. I think that win had more to do with the injury Macy Barber suffered than it actually had to do with Roxanne Modafferi. You had a girl hobbling around with a torn, blown out knee. And Roxanne, when she gets you to the mat, she's good. Like, she really has that advantage over a lot of fighters in that division. Excellent jiu-jitsu, good ground and pound too. Like, she puts a lot of significant strikes together on the ground. Standing up, she's volume heavy, but gets desperate for takedowns. Now, let me blow your mind right now. Roxanne Modafferi and Lauren Murphy actually competed against each other in the Ultimate Fighter tryouts. They actually had to grapple each other. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I watched that. And, for what I was thinking before I even saw that fight, before that grappling match, like 2-minute grappling round, Lauren Murphy looked pretty good. It looked like she can really stifle the offensive grappling of Roxanne Modafferi and, hold her own on the mat. So when you think Modafferi having a huge advantage on the ground, I don't really see it that much in this fight. I think Murphy's strong enough to keep it on the feet. And if she keeps it on the feet, even though she doesn't have much of a volume advantage, 3.76 versus 3.06 significant strikes per minute, I just think Murphy's going to win this fight at 7,700. And I think that might surprise a lot of people. And they think that, Modafferi is, one of the forgotten fighters of that division. But for me, Murphy does enough to get the job done. Does she get a finish? Most likely not. I think this is another decision, buddy.
Opening fight of the night, I think, is very similar to last week. I feel like, I don't love playing the opening fight of the night, but I feel like you got to play this one too with Austin and Max. Max replacing Joe Selecki, who had to pull out of this fight. Joe pulled out on, was it Friday or Saturday of last week? I talked to Joe I want to say Thursday. So it was like 2 days later that he pulled out of the fight. Max, undefeated, tremendous grappler. I mean, that's I want to say 2-time national champion in college. Had an injury that halted potentially being a 3-timer. Taking on Austin here. Max is going to be a big part of my lineups.
Yeah. So, all right. I don't know what the heck's going on. Jason every week's taking the first fight I don't know what the heck's going on. But this fight, I think, is another pivotal matchup that you're going to need in your lineup. And typically, the first fight of the night is, let me say, the lower skilled fighters of the card, but not so much in this instant. I think it's important to have this fight based on a few reasons. We've seen Austin Hubbard get controlled and dominated in the grappling and wrestling department against Marco Madsen, who happens to be the teammate of Max Roskopf. So, I think that Max really should have a solid game plan. Now, in saying that, Max is only 5-0, okay? And, Roskopf is coming off an injury. He tweeted about it, and he actually said that he's like, he's been dealing with an injury for a couple weeks and he hasn't been able to train, but he just wants in the UFC cage. He wants to get in there and show what he can do. And I think that he trains so much grappling that he could honestly go in there in unlimited training, put away Hubbard with a quick choke because he dominates that front headlock position and is so sneaky with chokes. Now, in saying that, 7,800 Hubbard, he ain't a bad play. And he's not a bad play because what happens if Roskopf doesn't get it done early? Even though he has tremendous grappling, tremendous wrestling, and great submission wins. What happens if he doesn't get it done early and his lack of training really shines through? Then you could be seeing Austin Hubbard performing at the level that he was in the third round against Marco Madsen when he was really putting it to him. So I think you need this fight. I'll have slightly more Roskopf. About 55%. This is literally the Ivy Aguilera fight all over again for me. I think you need one side or another. I wish Hubbard was a little less expensive at 7,800 because if he wins, does he really bust through the score sheet? I don't know, but I think that Roskopf could be one of those guys to get you a quick round one win.
Of course, we are going to answer your questions here momentarily. Of course, don't forget on Saturday, live before lock, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, Pete and I will be here to answer your last-minute questions. We go hour and 15, try to help you make those lineups. So I do want to get into the questions that have been asked that we have not been able to get to. So as I kind of scroll down here, Pete, because I know there was one of the questions about they picked 3 fighters and said name 2 of them. As I'm trying to find it here. Actually, forget that question. Ty's got his usual question. FanDuel Cash Core.
All right.
FanDuel Cash Core and also top 3 value guys for FanDuel.
Okay, FanDuel Cash Core, Camacho. I think you have to have Curtis Blaydes. I don't care where you are. And then Burgos. I like those 3 as a nice cash core for FanDuel based on striking. And, ground and pound counts the same. So that's why I like those 3 for FanDuel. And for cheap plays, we already talked about it. But I'll go back to the well. Lyman Good would be popular. He's not bad. He could get a finish. I think that Barrio is going to be that 7K option that a lot of people are going to forget about. And I hope he doesn't go out there and put up another stinker of a performance and gets another decision loss or even a decision win because he needs to really shine through if he wants to stay in the UFC. I think it's a loser leaves town type of fight. Camacho 8,000, talked about him. And I'm not too big on too many underdogs this week. Some weeks you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to put some underdogs in my lineups. But for me, a lot of the favorites I am agreeing with.
Milan says choose 2 of the 3. Barryout, Emmett, and Lyman Good.
Okay, so the chalk would be Emmett and Good, but I will say Good and Barrio, and that's just me personally.
Volkov, because I know this is going to be a popular question that we're going to get on Saturday.
Yeah.
What's his path to victory?
Keep it standing, keep it at range, but that's a lot easier said than done with a small cage. I've fought in a smaller cage, and it feels like no matter where you move, that guy's right in front of you. And, it takes a big adjustment. And being these guys are heavyweights, that cage already seems smaller. So his path to victory is to throw something up the middle, whether it's a straight shot, an uppercut, a knee. He needs to literally find the perfect timing. And that's what you could see the guys on the outside waiting and waiting and waiting because he doesn't want to overextend, overcommit, and get taken down, put on his back. I don't think he has the ability to get up from too many takedowns, maybe one, but I think he's going to be eating a lot of ground and pound.
Of course, be sure to hit that like button here on YouTube. That does help us out a lot. Always appreciate everyone that chimes in each and every week. Of course, if you do have any questions, be sure to put it right there in the chat as we will answer your questions. Arturo was asking about our picks. So main event, I think we're pretty on the same page here with Curtis Blaydes. You're with me with Shane Burgos?
Yeah, Burgos is my dude. So I like Burgos. I love crafty strikers, and Burgos is one of the guys that I think, if you look at Calvin Kattar, right, that win over Burgos literally has aged so well. You thought about it. They were just, two newcomers in the UFC. And then now you think at where Calvin's at and where Shane Burgos is looking. I just think that Shane Burgos is so talented. And I think this could be a breakout performance.
Pennington, Renault. I like Pennington to win the fight. I do not like the fight in DFS at all.
Same, agree. Pennington's probably my least favorite fighter on the whole card from a DraftKings standpoint. I'll be absolutely shocked if she gets a finish. I mean, it could happen. I like Pennington to win the fight, though.
Bilal Muhammad, Lyman Good. From a DFS perspective, I'm going to have some shares in Lyman Good because of the value. But if you said just who I think is going to win the fight, I think Bilal Muhammad probably wins by decision. But Lyman Good, I just think there's a lot of value there from a DFS perspective because, like, if you sit there and say, hey, these guys fight 10 times, 6-4.
Yeah, it's a close fight, and I think the odds suggest the same thing. Lyman Good should be the better DFS player. I don't think that Muhammad should be into much consideration in your lineups because I don't think it's a safe fight. It's not like it's a gimme. And he's probably not going to score the best because he is a smart fighter, high fight IQ, where he just works good takedowns, good pressure. Not a lot of output, though. Lyman Good doesn't throw a lot, and Lyman Good has 5.32 strikes per minute and has an advantage over Bilal Muhammad in that department. I just see this being a very technical fight and not the best performance. But if a finish happens, it is Lyman Good all day.
Roberts versus Miller. Give me Roosevelt Roberts. But as I said earlier, if Jim Miller wins this, I think it's very early, like first 2 minutes of the fight.
Yeah, I think it's Roosevelt Roberts pretty safely here. I think thinking Miller's going to go in there and get a quick finish over Roberts, I think that's a little much. I don't really see that happening. I can see Miller, giving him some trouble in some spots and obviously some grappling transitions and scrambles and all that stuff. And if Roberts fades like he has been fading in his fights, you could be looking at Miller getting into a close fight. But for me, Roberts all day.
Green versus Guida. I like Green in the fight. I just don't know if you get the return on value from a DFS perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you that I like Green in the fight. And I'm going to take a stand here and I'm going to be a little bit over the field because I think this is a spot that I can really have some leverage over the field. And it's kind of a leverage play for me. It's one of the forgotten 9,000 options in Green. The significant strikes are there. His striking defense is there. I just think he can go out there and expose Guida. I don't think Guida is that good anymore.
Van Buuren versus Torres. We talked about it earlier. Maybe I'll look like an idiot by the time this is done. But give me Tecia Torres, and I'll tell you what, man. Overall super draft, Tecia Torres may be the fighter you need to target just because of being at 1.45 times.
It's a good point. I mean, look at Tecia Torres. You know what she is. She gets out grappled. She gets out muscled, and she loses close decisions. And the decisions haven't been so close lately. But what have we really seen from Van Buuren that's going to show that she's going to go in there and just get rid of Tecia Torres or have a win against somebody who's not going to just give it? That last win of Van Buuren's career, okay, she looked good, but the girl wasn't, giving much resistance. And I think Tecia Torres in all departments is a tough, tricky fight. Working with Rose Namajunas, give me the veteran 7,200. I don't know if she gives the best DFS performance, but bold pick. Full fading Van Buuren and Torres for me.
Pehota versus Barriot. This is one that you talked about. You feel that you gotta have this one in your lineup.
Yeah.
God, I guess I feel more confident with Pehota, but man, not a ton of confidence.
Yeah. So, Oscar Pehota has some good grappling. And we have seen Marc-Andre Barriot get reversed and put in some bad positions, but doesn't get finished. So I don't know if Pehota can really just finish him here. Maybe he puts Barriot in some bad spots. Barriot has to, scramble back to his feet or get on top. And I really think that Barriot can expose the chinniness of Oscar Pehota.
Robertson versus Casey. Give me Jillian Robertson by submission.
Man, this might be my hardest fight to call because they both have problems in their games with what their opponent is so good at. Robertson stinks at striking, but is good at grappling. Casey is really good at striking and stinks at grappling for the most part. So I think the safer play would be Robertson. If you tell me, I'll have some Casey too in case she throws up another Hail Mary from her back, but she didn't remember last fight card. She didn't look too good on the scale. So perhaps we take that into consideration as well. And the problem with Robertson is just a striking, man. If you could put it on Robertson, I feel like she doesn't really like that pressure. So I'll be slightly underweight, but leaning a little bit to Robertson.
Camacho versus James. Give me Camacho.
Yeah, Camacho for me. I'll have one, maybe two lineups with James because anything can happen. We have seen Camacho get hurt, finished, and outworked. And if James goes in there and does have good cardio, but how can you have so much good how can you have good cardio on, late notice, a last minute replacement, unless he was training for a fight?
48 hours notice. That's the question mark there.
I'm picking Camacho.
Modafferi versus Murphy. Man, it seems like every time you bet against Roxanne, she wins. So I'm gonna bet against her. I'm gonna say Murphy.
Dude, I'm always off on Roxanne Modafferi. I don't even count the last fight because when you really think about Macy Barber, that fight, that was an injury and that's a fluke thing. Macy Barber wins that 90% of the time. Roxanne Modafferi at 8,500. I just think Murphy can really emulate everything that she's doing and then just do it a little bit better. So give me Murphy as an underdog pick at 7,700. Not sure if I like it for DraftKings though.
And then, of course, first fight, you got Max versus Austin. Give me Max, even the UFC debut here on 1 week's notice.
Ooh, slightly in the Max Roscoff. I think that he can really get a submission win over Hubbard, even though Hubbard hasn't been submitted. Hubbard's, proven he's tough, but I think you could be looking at a very, very popular and talented fighter here in Roscoff, even though he's only 5-0. So, slightly into Roscoff.
Of course, appreciate everyone in the chat leaving questions. Of course, we'll be back on Saturday live before lock, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, as myself and Pete will answer your questions. So if you do have any questions, I will have that. Do want to let the winner of the free Awesemo Plus MMA Weekly Pass is Sean Cripps at CPA Cripps. Sean, they'll be contacting you and to get your prize there of the free Awesemo Plus MMA Weekly Pass. So be sure to check that out. Of course, be sure to check us out on social media. Pete is at Pete the Heat MMA. Of course, I am at Jason_Floyd. And anything else you want to mention, Pete, before we get out of here?
No, thanks for the support, guys. You guys are awesome. If you have any questions, hit us up and let's win some more money. I love nothing more than seeing those screenshots. Saturday's early fight time. So make sure you guys tune in to the live before lock and, let's go.
Yeah, so first fight on Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. That'll be the prelims, and then the main card will start 8 p.m. Eastern time. So that is going to wrap it up for the Awesemo.com UFC Fight Night Blaydes versus Volkov strategy show. For Pete Rogers Jr., I am Jason Floyd.